Welcome to Beyond the Megawatt. I'm Valerie Crafton, Risk and Site Strategist. I'm joined by my co-host Mara Urban, reuse expert and real estate visionary. Together, we are the Data Center Darlings. We're spotlighting the voices and ideas powering digital infrastructure's future. Let's dive in and go beyond the megawatt.
Well, thanks everybody for joining. I'm really excited about having Tony on. Tony and I have now become friends over the years. I've watched him launch his business and his bringing really innovation to life and walking through that journey. It's not always been easy. I've seen him stand in rooms and say, "What is the edge?" And then we had 100 answers. And then Tony said, "Wrong. There is no answer. Everything's the edge." So thank you, Tony, for taking some time out with us today. Let's just get right in. Let's talk about your journey. We know the veteran, you're a veteran. Workforce development and transition is super important to you, but just kind of tell us where you came from and how you've gotten here today and into this new world.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm super happy to be here, and thanks for the inference on the veterans. And yes, it is important to me. I went to the academy because my grandfather taught me this idea of service above self. And I felt like before I could do something, I wanted to give back to everything that we kind of had. But at the academy, when I was looking to try to figure out what I wanted to do, I wanted to do submarines, and it's not because of nuclear power. Actually, nuclear power made things not fun, but the submarine portion is probably the last vestige of true military command out there, where you don't have your boss looking over your shoulder. Like in the Navy, every single surface ship, every single plane, they all can communicate back, and everyone knows where they're at, and their boss can tell them what to do. On a submarine, you submerge, no one knows where you're at, and you get in places that if you're caught, national leaders are going to know, and your front page of CNN. So, and you're 38 years old as a CEO, doing this kind of stuff, making these kind of questions with a bunch of average age of 19 or 20 years old, and you're getting that done. And so that's my whole premise, kind of what I've been talking about with the veterans is, and people always think that these young kids are automatons, like they're told what to do, and that's not it at all. I mean, they are qualified in what they do. They're given responsibility and they're challenged, and they will let you know if they're right and they're wrong, because they take pride in it, for one thing, but that's also their job. So if you tell them to do something that is going to put the boat or the ship in harm's way, they will not do it, and they will push back on you. So I see those all the time on LinkedIn. But in fact, you posted something today about a carrier, and it's about basically saying there's a 19-year-old kid driving this thing. Why aren't you hiring them? And I always get the same thing. Oh, they just were told what to do. It's the officers and chiefs are in charge, and that's not it at all. They're the ones who make the things happen. They're the ones doing it. And so that's kind of why I feel so passionate about it, because they're kind of left out to dry, I feel like, a little bit. And they could bring so much to the workforce in intangibles that we don't even think about, that you might be saying you need them, but you don't know you need them, if that kind of makes sense. But yeah, so going back, I was super fortunate when after my command, I wanted to leave the Navy to spend more time with my family. I did my 20 years. And then I kind of was going to go to Meta and work on the facility side. But what I realized is, a submarine has like 14 or 15 megawatts of IT load. So we kind of had a cloud. So I kind of knew how cloud works. So I got more into the other out of the facility operations stuff, into more of the design operations, construction operations stuff. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. I did different things at Meta, and of course different things at Oracle too, just trying to grow and kind of understand the full platform. So that's kind of my story really quick. And then like I said, I can't shout enough to Chris Crosby. I totally cheated on a startup when I left Oracle. I left to go run a modular business, but I wasn't a startup. I was like an incubated startup. Like I could totally screw up and I could still make payroll. So it was like I felt like I was doing a startup with, like, when you're doing bowling and they put the kids stuff up. Chris did teach me the value, though, of smart people learn by two ways. You learn by making mistakes. So there's two ways to do it. You can hit the ditch and have it recoverable, or you can hit the tree and not be recoverable. So he did a very good job of letting me hit the ditch to learn and prevent me from hitting the tree. But that's and I will say, going in there, I was coming out of a work, I was like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. I didn't know anything. So that's kind of been my learning story in progress, where I feel like I've seen more and done more in the military and then outside the military now.
Well, you've talked a lot about the veterans and the strength that they bring to the industry. Where do you think we're really missing the mark, and how do we build a better bridge between the talent and the emerging infrastructure jobs for the veterans?
The first things I'm doing with the Navy is we're doing stuff to bring executives out on carriers to show them what we're capable of. But what we're trying to get them to do is advertise on social media that a good path to tech is through the Navy. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, you're operating with very high-tech technology, doing very interesting things that translates very well, except you can't write a resume to save your life. And so an example I love is, and I go back to my submarines, and there's a people called fire controlmen who basically they manage the bearings and they help you track submarines, but they also manage all the network and the servers. I can guarantee every single resume that a fire controlman puts there, they talk about how they track submarines, not the fact that they manage the 14 megawatt cloud, like all the IT infrastructure on it.
Wow.
That's the kind of stuff you have to look past what's on the resume, but they're the intangible things too. It's these people have put service above self. They are very team focused. They are team oriented, where I feel like in the outside, it's very rare you find someone who puts a team above self. It's right or wrong or indifferent. It seems to be self first. Veterans don't do that often, and they will stay late and they will get the job done. And I think that you can teach them anything too. I mean, they change jobs every 2 years. They can pick stuff up very quickly. It's just we never give them a chance because their resume says this, but they can pick anything up and do very, very well at it. I mean, and they'll never say like I was a program manager, but they've managed like a million line shipyard availability to get a submarine out of dock. I can guarantee even a gigawatt construction doesn't have a million lines of work items. So it's just that stuff. It just doesn't translate. And then it's something the military, and they recognize it. They just don't do a good job at it. They don't. There's too many people leaving. They can't help everyone, and so they just kind of give you some bland stuff and send you on your way. And that's what we're trying to fill in. And I think kind of the veterans have a lot of stress with that too. Imagine you're going from, your work family it's a family. It's not a work family that you're with, and you've blood. You've been on deployments with them. You've fought with them, and then you're just dropped off in the corner, and that's it. You have no one to depend on. You have no one plans your day now. No one tells you what to do. You have no one to lean on. You have no one to go out and have a beer with. You have to do all that stuff yourself. And it is very, very hard when you're so used to having that kind of support or even being told what to do it's like instantaneous. One day you have it, next day you don't. And it is jarring, to say the least. And you don't have to be in combat to get that kind of experience. It is super, super jarring, and people struggle with it a lot.
Yeah, there's two things I picked up on that. One was that I've heard it before, is that when they had this training inside the military that tells them have the folks on your team's back, right? You each have each other's back, but then they transition into corporate or another role into the industry, civilian industry, and that's not the reality they're faced. They're suddenly having to look out for themselves, and it's a very different culture, sort of dog eat dog, and it's actually very unfortunate. And one of the broken things that I hear about the corporate world, and why we had the big mass exit during COVID that we heard about, is just the lack of folks just coming together and being collaborative. And then the second thing was just people just missing the mark around, here we have a huge labor problem, but we don't want to think differently about who has those transferable skills to fill the gap. And I think it goes even beyond the veterans, but veterans is such a great opportunity. Like you said, they're used to going through the hard training, having to pick it up fast, and really working under pressure and doing whatever it takes to get it done. And even if that means long hours, and yet we're not even giving them a chance because, like you said, they don't check these boxes.
No, I think because it requires effort. You have to put yourself out there to go hire vets, and that's not the way recruiting is set up. Recruiting is set up as an intake. It is very few doing outreach, and if you do outreach, you're sitting at a stupid booth, just sitting there and handing out brochures. You are not actively getting out there and trying to find people, the right kind of people, and it's not set up like that. And there's other things that are happening now, like the Army's doing stuff to help out, and there's cool things that are set up too. Like if you're enlisted and you go do the GI Bill, you can actually go through Amazon and get internships, and as long as you're not a moron, get a job at the end of that. So there are stuff going out there, but it requires a lot of forward leaning, and that's just not how they're set up. It's you have to think differently, and you might have to hire 2 people for one job because it's going to take them a while to train. But guess what? That person's going to stay there. I think we are totally looking at the wrong thing, which is how long does that person stay and how much do I have to train, because we're afraid to hire 2 people at once because we're all limited to this headcount thing.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like total cost of ownership, how we always focus on the CapEx and not really the long-term investment that we're making. It's really the same thing. We're trying to minimize that upfront cost, when reality, you could hire the perfect person that could leave after 6 months, and that's wasted time and effort, wasted opportunity. And I just think we missed a big flick on that. But it requires work. It really does.
I was just going to add to that. So 2 things. Well, one, I think that the biggest strengths that the veterans bring right now is the technology is changing so quickly, and there's so much innovation. We're all in unknown territory, and our veterans were trained for the unknown. They're trained. Yep. There's a lot of preparation, and to your point, we think, they're under the leadership of higher ups, that given that autonomy, they may not be successful, but that's all in preparation. Once they're out in the field and once they're on their own, right? They're with their team, but they're prepared for these unknown situations. And I've seen them do really well with innovation, just kind of thinking outside the box, all of those things that come into play. And then the second point of this of why we're not seeing as many veterans enter into the industry in this recruiting thing, I heard it on one of the infrastructure Mason panels. There's an order of service, and you don't pat yourself on the back in the military. You kind of wait for somebody higher rank to say, hey, you're actually doing a good job, and here's the order of service and all the things. They're not used to selling themselves, and they're just kind of waiting for somebody else to say it for them.
No, I agree. And that's what I try to do, but also that we have to look at helping veterans as a community. We're very selfish. If I'm at Amazon, I'm going to help you come into Amazon. If you want to go to Microsoft, screw you. I'm not going to help you. And I think that's wrong. We have to the tech community needs to come together and look at veterans as a pool. And if someone gets hired at your competition, you should be happy that you helped the veteran get hired, and not that you helped someone hire. And I think that's not how we're rewarded. You're rewarded for, this is my statistic. This is how many veterans I hired in the last 6 months, not how many veterans I helped. So to me, it's the focus on the wrong thing. And veterans do need a little bit of support, because we're all told that everything's the same, like leadership's the same. Leadership's not the same. And if I hear another person talk about servant leadership works well for some people. It doesn't work well for other people. And so we all think we dealt with different cultures in the Navy. We dealt with no cultures. I mean, it's like everyone is taught to think the same way in boot camp. And in the end, you can always just tell them, do it because I told you to do it, and maybe throw something at them, and nothing's going to happen. You can't do that in the military. You have to actually take all that input, and you're going to have to work with different cultures, people from different countries, people who grew up differently. And that's where people get in trouble in the military, because they're told leadership's the same. They want to make an impact, and they become a-holes right off the bat. They start ordering people around, and they get fired. And that also doesn't help veterans at all. So it's like I was very fortunate. I had a leader called Richard Miles when I was at Meta, who actually told me I couldn't do anything for 6 months. I was pissed. I was like, I'm here to make my mark. In reality, he protected me from myself. Mm-hmm. And I kind of understood more coming out of that, even though I didn't quite understand it, but I get it now. And
So
you have to.
what were you doing during that 6 months? Because that might help.
I was learning. I was basically, it's the train follow that I was listening to him, how he runs the meetings, how the decision making. We talk about that kind of stuff. We sit through leadership. We sit through HR. You kind of learn the nuance and differences in how things are made and how to lead and how soft leadership works, how you influence people. Like all that stuff is, you think you know it, but you don't. And that's why it drives me a little bonkers on some of these leadership books for people, who might have been in the military, who've never really led on the outside. It's, you have you know how to lead 1% of the segment of America. You have no clue how to lead this 99%. Now, some people might do well under that. A lot of them don't. So it's, and that's really what it was. It was, you have to take the time to teach them. And we can't do that. Pretty much when we hire, the barn's already burning down. And I just want someone to get in there and put out the fire. And and so you don't have time to teach someone. And I think that's where you have to get ahead of it.
It's really interesting. And I witnessed this one time where someone told me, oh, this person is just going around dropping grenades in every department. And all they were really trying to do was drive an initiative of improvement. But they didn't know how to do it in a corporate world. They didn't understand the road show and the way you would present it and how that presentation is different for your peers versus the leadership versus the executive level. So there's this path that you go to kind of get the buy-in and drive it all. But instead, it was more of a going around saying, you all have it wrong. This is what we should do. And trying to shove it down someone's throat. And people did not take that well.
I can imagine that was probably a nuke who did that, a submarine nuke, because that is basically what they're told to do. But that's what you're told. I mean, people's lives are on the line. So you get in there, you're wrong. This is the way you need to do it. That is what needs to be broken out of people. But we're never told that in TAPS class or anything like that through transition. But that is how we all fail. That's why we have this battered thing of veterans not listening. They're very pushy. They're very in your face. It's not. They're just struggling to take what they've learned and adapt it to this civilian world. And we don't have enough people out there telling them that even just don't do anything. Just sit on your hands. Don't do anything for 30 to 60 days. It's probably the best thing that you can do for them.
Yeah, I love that advice. So what else do we need to put into place to help support a transition outside just sounds like pausing and being more of a fly on the wall, be a learner and a listener, and before you try to start driving change, how else can we support our veterans just from a mental health perspective even?
I mean, I think it's give them recognize what they've gone through and pair them up with maybe another veteran inside your company. You will, I mean, unfortunately, you're gonna have to give them some special treatment and you may not want to do that, but if you want it, they're going to need it and they won't need it for very long. But you just have to recognize that you're going to have to go out of your way a little bit and spend time on the soft skills when we typically don't like to do that. We typically do soft skills in the corporate world by watching this video. That's my soft skills on how I'm not to say things or how I'm not to do things. When I'm rowdy, they need that kind of hand holding a little bit. And the best person to do it's another veteran. But if they can, then just someone who recognizes that veterans need a little more help when they come in, but once they get it, they're very, very good. And they're going to stay, they're very loyal too. And they will stay at a company and they will do anything to get the job done, which is sometimes bad, but it is a good trait to have with people that you can trust them.
Yeah, especially if you put a little bit of boundaries around them, some controls in place, let them know, hey, maybe it's a baby step. We sit on your hands for 30 to 60 days. Okay, now let out the leash a little bit more, let out the leash a little bit more. And now you can take him off the leash because he understands the boundaries, or he or she understands the boundaries.
And military tends to thrive under pressure. They like pressure. They don't do well without pressure. So sometimes they try to manufacture their own pressure because it's like you hate it because you're under pressure all the time, but you get to a point where you can't live without it because that's what drives you. That's what makes you get better. So how do you live without that pressure? And sometimes you will manufacture that pressure to get back to that place to drive things done. And that definitely does not work.
I've heard it I've heard it worded too. They just passion, that you need a veteran needs something every day that they're passionate about, and they feel like they have something that they're something bigger than themselves, because that's but the military is something bigger than yourself. And when you get thrown into the corporate world, you kind of sometimes you disappear into you're a number, right? And it's not as impactful. So finding a way, and I think this translates to a lot of us, right? We get burned out. The COVID thing, it was a lot of that. We're like, oh, here's a solid exit door that I can get out of this madness. But yeah, my grandfather committed suicide at 45. And one of the things, when my family didn't talk about it a lot until years later, but one of the things that he kept saying is I feel like I'm not contributing. He had 9 kids. He was raising a family. He was doing all these things, but it just wasn't enough. And so spending time, like you said, I love what your leader did, is taking a 6-month, like, hey, I'm going to spend time with you. Right. And so we have to make that time. That mentorship has to be part of that onboarding and spending time with them. And I always say align people and their roles and responsibilities with their passions. I think it works with everybody, right? So yeah, that's important.
But it's very easy to lose that focus in the day-to-day when you are just playing a whack-a-mole with problems. Teaching someone soft skills and helping the mentor is probably 1,000th on your list of 100. But you have to make the time, and you have to do it, and you have to tell yourself to do it, because it'll pay off, but you'll also help change someone's life too. And I mean, I've been guilty of forgetting that too. So it is a very hard thing to remember, but you need someone to remind you. To me, it's someone to call you. Everyone needs, I guess the best way to say it, everyone needs a battle buddy. And that battle buddy is someone to call you out. And if you don't have that battle buddy, you are going to completely make mistakes, but you need someone who could be truthful with you to say, what the hell are you doing? Or stop being an asshole, that kind of stuff. You need a battle buddy and it's also, if you're stressed out and you need someone to talk to, you need a battle buddy. Everyone needs a battle buddy. If you don't have a battle buddy, and you can call it something different outside the military, but you need a battle buddy.
Yeah. It does take a try. We talked about Jay Brummett's son, and I think he'll be okay with us talking about this openly. I think he's going to join us as a guest later on. There's a lot of, when we lose somebody like that, I think there's a lot of what could we have done differently. And I heard somebody say it once, when you see somebody under mental distress, usually people are aware of it, right? I've had family members, we've all had friends and family, and sometimes we're on the ground and they're on this cliff and we see them hanging and we're like, do this, do that, let's get support. But I've heard it said, if you could get a tribe of people together that can link up to this person, we have to build a community that supports these people, because it can't just be one person. And that's why I say, if anybody feels like it was your fault, or you were remiss and you weren't there to support a person, I think it's important that everybody remembers it actually takes a community to help save and rescue somebody. And it can't just fall on one person. So I think that would be my biggest call to action for all of us, is to link together as a community. And once we identify someone that is in trouble, that needs support, it can't just be one person. It really does take a community. And the data center industry, we are a tribe. We're made up of so many people that build each other up, and we're a community. The strength is there. We just need to kind of come together and have a program in place where, when we identify people that actually need that support, that we come together and create that tribe to support them. So
I've
it's as simple as inclusion. It's you have to go out of your way to include people, and that's all they need, is not to feel like they're alone. And don't have any way ahead, and they're by themselves. Because it is very easy to fall. And like I said, it doesn't have to be someone who's not been in combat. Yeah. It is, like I said, jarring to go from all of that to nothing.
Yeah, I watched that firsthand when I was a FRG leader in the Army, which means family readiness group leader. And usually the officers' wives will support the families while you go to war. So after 9/11, I volunteered for this role, and the support was 100% community. I mean, we were constantly sending letters, constantly sending care packages, constantly fundraising for when they come home to celebrate them, and just I was constantly setting up VTCs, which is video teleconferencing, setting up schedules so that the family members can meet with their military folks while they were deployed, teaching the spouses how to drive sticks because they didn't know how to drive their car. It was the only car they had. Giving them mace because they were home alone, telling them to take the yellow ribbons down because that told everybody they were home alone. And it was, having these, bringing all of the families together and having one big Thanksgiving dinner, and just really supporting them when they felt alone. I don't know what's going on with my spouse. And that's the kind of space they come from, is they come from a community. The military is used to having that community from on base to transition out. And so when they no longer have that FRG, that I know that my family's gonna be taken care of. I know I've connected people with one that have different families with different languages to help them learn how to speak English. I've created fitness programs to help reduce stress. I mean, just constantly finding a way to give back and be a part of a community as they're transitioning out. That is 100%, Mara, to your point, helping them become a part of a new tribe and a new community is the least you can do, because I watched it firsthand. It meant so much because there's a lot of pressure and stress when your loved one is deployed, but when they're transitioning out and you're watching them struggle and try to flounder around in a whole new world, if we don't come around them and their families, then it's really tough. It's really hard for them to settle in and find their space in this world. So to both of what you said, I agree 100%. This episode is brought to you by BCS switchgear, where power meets precision. From obsolete breakers to the new 15 to 34.5 kV switchgear and low break switches, BCS delivers fast answers and custom engineered solutions that keep mission critical systems online. We want to segue into some energy conversations about overselling.
Let's get to the good stuff. Maybe let's just start with, obviously we have a problem right now trying to solve for power, and you have made some bold statements around SMR. Why are we trying to solve cancer with SMRs when most deployments need 5 to 10 megawatts? So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think there's a belief that, I mean, there are so many companies out there that are selling nuclear right now, and a lot of these people don't even have designs that are vetted, or they haven't built their research reactor. I mean, there's really only thing you're going to get really quickly is one of these Gen 3s, so Westinghouse, GE, Hitachi, that kind of stuff. If you're dependent on one of these Gen 4, then you're going to wait a while. And so there's a mix of marketing out there that gives the feeling that we're going to have this soon, and it's not. I mean, it takes a long time to build this stuff. And so we're talking 2036, 2037. I mean, by that time, I mean, look at this, we're going to have an 800 kilowatt rack or a megawatt and a half rack next year. Like, how much do you really need of these kind of SMRs that are out there? So to me, it's, I just don't understand it, to be perfectly honest. I don't get it. And there's a reason why a lot of these companies don't talk about deployment time, like TerraPower. It's because it's taken longer than they thought. So it'll get done. It's just not going to be in that time frame they thought they're going to get done by. The only thing that's kind of out there, which I think is different, which we don't really talk about, which I'm kind of surprised, are microreactors, so like less than 5 megawatts. And I think they're interesting because they're like a nuclear battery. They're very different designs. They're like heat pump designs. They aren't like these other designs that they have, but that's been going on a long time with Project Pele down there in Idaho. And so those will be, you can probably order BWXT, I think, right now and get it in 2027, 28. And 5 megawatts, at least in my view of the world, is a very good deployment number. And this is where I get kind of contrary, and I don't think we have a power problem at all. I think we have a height problem, and I think we have a distribution problem. Like, I can find 5 megawatts anywhere. And if you consider 5 megawatts a super pod, a Blackwell, Grace Blackwell, which is 4.8 megawatts, and that's still 320 million. Like, how many tokens do you really need? And I'm not trying to discount the clouds and their trillions of tokens, but most people don't need that. They need billions of tokens. And in hyperscale, it takes a long time to build. who knows what you're going to need then. The rapid change that NVIDIA has with their cycles like 12 months right now. Like if you're building, what do you build for right now? Do you build for, Vera Rubin, which is this, 800 kilowatts to a megawatt and a half? Do you build for what's beyond? Because I can guarantee by the time your Grace Blackwell data center, you're already out of date. And maybe AMD is what you should be building for, or even better yet, maybe you should be building for custom silicone, because NVIDIA is very good at training. They're not necessarily as good as inference. So I just think we need to do a rethink on our infrastructure and understand that this is not the compute that we've had before. This is not compute that has been trailing off performance between X5, X7, X9, E3, E4. This is compute that's been doubling in performance every 6 months since 2012. So like one Grace Block rack could be the equivalent, I think it's like 300 racks of standard compute. It's irrelevant how many more tokens you need. They're gonna always, NVIDIA will keep up with the performance, but also you've already shoved the darn internet in one of these models. What other stuff are you going to shove in there? And that's when I think is interesting, we can talk about in a second, is what Grok 4 just did, which proves even more of my point about distributed compute.
Interesting. Yeah, let's go ahead and segue into that. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. So to me, it's what Grok 4 did was they did a lot of this thing called reinforcement learning. It's like how you teach your kid. They try something, no, that doesn't work. They try something, no, that doesn't work. That's what it is. So you have this training model, which means low latency, but then you have this kind of rollout workers and you have these evaluation nodes. And guess what? They don't have to be in the same data center as your training model. They can be 100 milliseconds out or something, because you're basically assigning that person a task and teaching that person, and you get the answer back. And so that's what Grok 4 uses, this reinforcement model to teach it. And so that means you do not have to have all your training in one location, that you can go back to distributed compute a little bit for this reinforcement learning as you do it. And OpenAI is moving to the same thing. I just think it's super interesting that it's just more of this focus, much like inference and everything else. It's all kind of going back to this distributed compute thing. To be honest, the Gigawatt campus is hard. But the real problem to me is that we're going to face out here. It's not, can I build 10 gigawatt campuses? Is can I build 100,000 5 megawatt campuses? That's the problem that no one's talking about, that I think we need to talk about. It's more than just getting power. It's more than just permitting. It's where's the network that's going to support you? Is it satellite? Is it not satellite? Is it FSO? Is it microwave? I don't know. But that's, to me, the more interesting problem, because by 2030, 68% of the market will be inference. And it's not going to be this inference like write my term paper for me. It's going to be a platform that makes money. Like all this comes down to, how do you make money? Does a language model make money by itself? No, it does not. You have to get that app that uses that model to make it. And that app is not a subscription service, even though it makes money. Like Anthropic, I think Ant has lost 3 or 4 billion in the last year, and OpenAI has lost 5 or 6 billion. Eventually, someone's going to want an ROI. And so, what is that special iPhone that comes out of this to do it? And I'm seeing some of the stuff right now, which I can't really talk about because of NDA. But to me, that's the problem. We're associating these massive campuses with money making, and they do not make money by itself. You need to deploy it. Unless you're doing a cloud GPU hour like these neo clouds, then you can make money. But outside of that, just building models do not make money.
Interesting.
So along those lines, I think what you're saying is we think in these big hyperscale campuses, and yes, the ROI might be in something modular fashion, but I would say innovation also happens a lot quicker in a smaller, when you break it down into Legos. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that, how modularity is playing into that innovation piece in a heavily regulated industry. We're facing so many obstacles. How does modularity give us a better pathway to innovation?
Yeah, I think so. A great example of this is United States has no problem with chips. We can get all the chips we want. We can get H100s, H200s, B200s, B300s. We can get the Grace Blackwell. Guess who couldn't get the chips? China. Guess what they did? They were forced to innovate. They were forced to use old chips and innovate to get something that has the exact performance as, this is DeepSeek, to get the exact performance as OpenAI at a fraction of the cost, because they did it differently, because they had to. Like they couldn't just throw money at it. They couldn't just throw these new GPUs at it. They had to do something different. This kind of goes into the modulars is you can't, when you're doing these 100,000 campuses, you can't do it the same way. You have to think differently. You have to reevaluate how you're doing construction, how you're doing, how you're doing manufacturing, what mass customization actually really needs. Like how many trims do you have? How many options do you want to have? It is a very different problem set that forces you really to innovate. I mean, you have to. You can't do it your traditional means. You have to think about it differently. And that's what I think is a little bit of our problem in our industry is we haven't been forced to innovate because we can just keep on throwing money at the problem and hope it works out. And most of the time it does work out. But I think with modular and just distributed compute is going to force us to innovate and think of new ways to do things because we have to.
Well, and I love what you're saying. Was just thinking about how many jobs it takes to build a data center and the fact that one of our biggest risks in the industry is labor. And if you can get the labor, the skilled labor and the quality of the skilled labor to actually go and build it, and then the cost to get that level of skill to stay on the job, we're having to put budgets aside just for additional incentives to maintain so they don't leave for $1 to go someplace else. And so I think about that and I think, well, why haven't we here, I mean, especially in the US where we really are leading this charge in the world, we just keep going back to the same thing over and over and over rather than thinking about, well, I don't have the labor. Who cares how many jobs this brings in? I don't have the labor to fill those jobs. And modular really solves a lot of those problems.
No, I agree. But, sometimes it's easier to keep doing what you're doing, put your head down and get it. There's less risk to doing something like that. There's less risk to doing what you knew worked in the past. It is risky, especially on $1 billion project, with your investors and your customer to try something different. That's why I know all these data center companies are actually doing some really cool things, like in terms of manufacturing and microgrids and power distribution, but they can't do that because the customer may not want to accept that much risk. So there's no value in them innovating and getting out ahead of the problem and recommending solutions that may or may not be accepted because the cloud has very low risk tolerance. They know what they like and that's what they're going to get. Where we might try to be innovative, but it might not be accepted. And that's where I think enterprise is more interesting in that innovation because they want to get ahead. And that's what I like kind of working outside the cloud now with these enterprise companies who want us to think differently, who want us to be innovative because we're trying to solve very, very different problems. It's not the problem we've already solved, which is this gigawatt campus or a bunch of 100 megawatt campuses. It's very much a distributed campus. How do you put data centers at all these 500 VA hospitals is a good example of that. And how do you network all that stuff together? And how do you firewall to make sure that personal privacy information doesn't get out? Those are big, beefy problems that force you to innovate instead of just continue to doing what we know.
A lot of the focus right now that I'm seeing are these big hyperscale campuses. Everybody loves to chase them. Everybody loves to build them. Everybody loves the money, all the things. I think we are missing the mark on planning for that aggregated edge, all of the things that takes more resources, takes all the things. And again, that modularity plays into how do we solve for that? Because it's a lot of work, but yeah.
It's a $300 billion addressable market by 2030. I don't get it at all. And I'm not saying that we aren't going to need hyperscale campuses. It's just we are spending zero time figuring out how to do distributed compute right now. And that's not everyone. There's definitely people out there who are leading the way, and they're just not talking about it with what they're doing for distributed compute. But we continue, and it all comes down to the multiples. Will you want to change a multiple? Do you want to chase a multiple that's 8 by 10? Do you want to chase a multiple that's 24 to 30? That's what it is. But I still say past success does not equal future success. And if you want to look at that, go look at Enron or go look at The Big Short, go watch the movie. And I'm not trying to say that the data center market is like that. It's just we have to think differently. We have to honestly think, is this the right investment? Is this the way we want to go forward? And it might be what the right answer is, but I'm not sure we're having those kinds of questions. And as data center, we can't do it because we take everything from the cloud. So if the cloud says they want to go, we just got it. That's what we're going to do, even though maybe that's not the right answer. But that's why I love what I do, which is kind of, I get the freedom to be more innovative in what we're doing.
Well, that's why we have you on. We're kickstarting the conversation.
Yeah, to think more differently about stuff.
Yeah, I'm still questioning on whether or not if we think it's more risky or because it's the unknown. But frankly, we're all standing at the brink of first of a kind and unknown anyway. And so what's more risky, taking on something that is streamlined, controlled, takes less labor, takes less energy, and all along with more sustainable, all the things, right? Safer, and say that that's risky compared to traditional, which we can't seem to make a schedule or come in the budget if our life depended on.
I agree. 100% agree. And to be honest, this is what, doing a startup, I learned one really big thing that I never thought. I'm very technically oriented, so I like the big shiny objects. I actually made a data center that you actually had breakers that you could open with your phone and all this other stuff, very software driven. But in the end, what's the ROI? How am I going to make money off of that? Really expensive, and it kind of was cost prohibitive. So it all comes down to, how are you going to get a return? If you keep spending $85 billion a year, the market's going to want a 10 to 20% return. How are you set up to make that return is? And that's what I think we can't answer all the time right now. It's what's the return? How are we going to make this return? We're just assuming that something is going to happen. And I'm not quite sure if that's really true, if something's going to happen. So I'm very afraid that we could be hung out to dry as an industry as we commit all these resources to something, and the big special app doesn't happen, and these prescription models don't give them enough money to do it. And you add in the rapid change of every 12 months, like massive changes to your data center. And we're going from, oh, by the way, we're going from enterprise to industrial. I mean, who's worked with 100 volt DC before? In the military, yes, but who else has worked for them? I mean, that's arc flash shoot stuff. And I know we're asking the right questions. I just don't necessarily see it all the time at data center conferences, because it's uncomfortable to think about, and it risks the future. And but I do think the cloud wants to think like this. It's kind of like the military. You're afraid to say something, but I think we should be saying something just to question some. And we could be completely wrong, but let's at least have the conversation. And I just don't feel like the conversation's happening. I mean, I could be completely in la la land with SMRs and all of this stuff, but I just don't feel like we're having a conversation at all. It's all just doing what we did before and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely generalizing it. So please, for the data center people who are listening to this, I'm not trying to say you're doing it wrong. I just want to have a conversation about what's the ROI, what's the return, what's the end state in 5 years. Like seriously, like your data center goes out of date in a year. If you're trying to do the big bet, we never had to deal with that before. And it's all going to come out when Vera Rubin comes out. Everyone builds his Grace Blackwell data centers, direct to chip, 132 kilowatts a rack. How are you going to change that to something that does 1.5 megawatts a rack by the way, by the end of next year?
You're kind of forcing a pause, right? And we move so fast. Technology is moving really fast. We are chasing the sexy things out there, and kind of getting us just to say, hey, let's just slow down for a minute and just think about this in a different way, which I love that about you, Tony. You've always done that. Well, Valerie, this might be a good time for you to break him into our audacious question.
Oh, is it that time? Because I thought we were going to do a little something different with him, with a little bit of a lightning round question.
Okay.
And then we'll end with an audacious. What's the most overhyped technology in infrastructure today?
I'd say OpenAI, and because they're language models, they're probabilistic language models. They don't know if they're right. Like if you ask for 50 states, they don't know what the 50 states. They have no clue what America is or what a state is. They're just giving you what they think. Like the fact that they think you're sentient. Come on, it's just a probabilistic model. It doesn't make overall positive cash flow. It's costing us a lot of money.
Yes, agreed. What's an underrated solution no one is paying attention to?
This agentic AI, like this ability for true AI, machine to machine decision making based on something. Like a machine sees something, it does something. Like maybe it's smart cars, maybe it's real-time language translation as you're going. That's the AI platforms that will make the difference, that will make the money on it, because that will have an ROI associated with it.
All right. One more before the audacious question. One piece of advice for someone trying to innovate in a heavily regulated industry.
And you gotta go to a place that they welcome that innovation. If you want to innovate, you aren't going to change people's minds in an overly bureaucratic organization, and it's just going to make you very frustrated and make people mad at you. You have to find that place that welcomes the innovation. I mean, you have a choice of where you work at. It might be dangerous to try to do something new, but if you really want to innovate, that's what you have to do. And if you don't, then don't complain about it.
I love that. All right, Mara, let's drop that audacious question.
All right, let's go. So we've already touched on this. I think we get it. You're placing your bets on starting to design for human scale in a modular, clean, and resilient way. But how would that, let's talk about this. Would that change who gets to build and who gets to benefit and who gets to lead?
I mean, it does, because the data center is not built for distributed compute. Like we have to be able to do 100,000 of these sites. And oh, by the way, we have to manage them. We're not built for that. We are built for very large campuses that are very easy. And so the benefits are all of us that use all of these everyday platforms that are going to get better. But I think it's going to take new companies to be able to do that kind of stuff, or companies maybe reinventing themselves how to do it. And to be honest, it's like we're shifting back to this network-centric architecture. Maybe the leaders of the future are the network companies who already have the network, the peering on-ramps. I mean, think about this. All of Kansas routes through Atlanta. The whole state routes through Atlanta. Makes absolutely no sense. But we're starting to build these ISPs now in Kansas that will take that and route that traffic differently. So what happens to Atlanta now that it loses all of Kansas traffic? How do those local communities use those new peering on-ramp points to make their business better? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're going back to this network-centric architecture, where the network's honestly the center of the universe, because latency and bandwidth constraint will matter.
A great way to end the episode. Thank you so much, Tony, for joining us today, sharing your story and your passion for veterans. It's a conversation we needed to have. And thank you so much, Mara. It's just been another fun episode, right? And I want to shout out to BCS, our sponsor, for allowing us to keep the mic hot. So thank you.
And hopefully, Tony, we'll see you at some events. You'll be at YADA?
Yeah, I will be there. Yeah, I'm starting to go back in the events a little bit now that I feel like we're getting to a better steady state and we're delivering more. But nice. And please, I am not trying to say the hyperscale community is going away or is going to die tomorrow at all.
No, we just need
let's just have a conversation.
Let's have the conversation. There we go.
But wait to have the conversation until my company's more established, because I want to be there.
I want to be the solution. Okay.